When I was 25, I'm 30 now, I used to be a people pleaser. I would just smile all the time. That's why I've got crow's feet at the sides of my eyes, because I was just smiling all the time. I would always laugh at people's jokes, even if I didn't find them funny. I let other people walk all over me. I didn't have a clue what a boundary even was. I was a pushover. I didn't have a backbone. And yes, I'm going to say it, I was a pussy. Which, by the way, does not have anything to do with the word vagina. When we say pussy, this actually comes from the word pusillanimous, which means a lack of courage. Oh, and before I continue, if this is your first time seeing my face, hello, my name is Oliver. I'm a life/dating coach, and on this channel I make content related to self-development, personal growth, psychology, and dating. But one of the worst parts about being a people pleaser is how lonely I felt. It didn't matter if I was surrounded by people. It didn't matter if I had people messaging me, if I was at a party, I still felt lonely. It's like I was trapped in this prison in my mind. The way I've described it before, it's like there's this 3-inch thick piece of glass that just separated me from just everybody else. It was a really hard time, to be honest. And sadly, this didn't get better for a while. Because around this time, the inevitable happened. It happens to every man eventually. I got dumped. And not gently either, it was fucking brutal. When she dumped me, as she was just explaining this, as she was dumping me, she openly just revealed that she'd been fucking someone else with the same sort of casual tone as if she was ordering her morning coffee at Starbucks. It was a kick in the balls so bad that it sent me into a pretty dark depression. Some days, getting out of bed it felt next to impossible. The whole time, I felt like I could have just broke down crying at any moment. That's how intense the pain was. So intense, in fact, that I made a commitment to figure out what part that I played in all this. I realized deep down that there was a way that I was being, there's a way that I was showing up in life at the time and in that relationship specifically that contributed to my circumstances. And I was determined to figure out what the hell that was. So hopefully I was never going to go through that again. So I started doing things that came sort of naturally to me that I'd practiced more in the past. Things like meditation, things like journaling a lot more, things that I could fall back on, the habits that I built previously in my life. But there was something missing. It's like these practices, they helped, but I just noticed that there was a few puzzle pieces missing until I read a book that blew my mind. That book is called No More Mr. Nice Guy by Dr. Robert Glover. Despite what the title might suggest, the book has nothing to do with helping men become assholes. That's not what the book is about. The book is actually about a pattern of behavior that is extremely common in men that Dr. Glover describes as the nice guy syndrome. A man with nice guy syndrome tries to gain approval and be liked by other people by being passive, accommodating, and self-sacrificing. That niceness isn't authentic. It's all a response to an insecurity and a desire and a need even to be liked by people. He's operating under the assumption that if he's just nice enough, if he's just a good enough guy, that will lead to everything that he wants, that will get his needs met. However, because this strategy does not work in adulthood, it often leads to frustration and resentment because he's not getting his needs met, no matter how hard he tries. Just about everything a nice guy does is consciously or unconsciously calculated to gain approval and avoid disapproval, says Dr. Glover. This book described me with such accuracy and precision that I genuinely started suspecting that Dr. Glover might have been outside my house stalking me as he wrote the book. I had nice guy syndrome. There's no way around it. That's exactly what I was going through. But unfortunately, there's no medication for it. You can't just pop a pill and wha-bam, you've fixed your nice guy syndrome. So like some approval addicted junkie, I checked myself into rehab, figuratively speaking. I became a nice guy in recovery. I was about to embark on a journey, my own inner spiritual journey of 5 steps to get my balls back. And it started with step 1. One of the things in the book that Dr. Glover suggests is becoming aware of all of the things you actually do to gain approval and avoid disapproval. In the book, he calls these attachments. So I made my grand list of attachments, and on that list were things like never allow the silence in a conversation, because silence might make people uncomfortable and you don't want that. Always be entertaining, always make people laugh, because if you make people laugh, they'll like you a bit more. And always be happy. And if you don't feel good, then don't make that anyone else's problem. Just sort of stomach that, put up with that, and just deal with it yourself. Don't make too much or too little eye contact. Always make the right amount of eye contact at all times and constantly be aware of that. These are just a few things on my list. It was bloody exhausting, to be honest. So with my list, what did Dr. Glover recommend that I do next? Simple, really. Stop doing it for a little while. This gave me a ton of anxiety. I was just, oh my God, I was all over the place. If someone asked me how I was, I openly just told them the truth. If I felt shit, I just said I feel shit. I stopped thinking so much about eye contact and just paid more attention to the person in front of me. And a question I started to ask myself as I did this is, what would please me? Because I was so interested in pleasing the people around me that I was forgetting all about my needs, my desires, my preferences. It was helpful, but nowhere near as helpful as the next step, which was step 2. When I thought about it, I actually had shame around being a man. When I thought about masculinity and masculine energy, it just made me cringe. It made me seize up. It made me think, oh, hang on, this is wrong or toxic or something. In the book, Dr. Glover suggests that certain things can create this situation in a man. One of the things is having female teachers. Have you ever noticed that? Have you ever noticed that you just have female teachers growing up? You barely have a male teacher anymore. And also for me, my father wasn't around all that much, which is the case for a lot of people. So I didn't really get a healthy masculine role model who was consistently there. What I did have were just an abundance of females. Dr. Glover suggests that these factors, as well as a bunch of others, might lead a boy to suppress his masculine energy and not really know how to cultivate it. This is one of the things that contributes to nice guy syndrome the most. He suggested in the book that we build healthy relationships with other men. Now, this is something that was completely lacking in my life. Even though I've done mixed martial arts and kickboxing and Brazilian jiu-jitsu before, I never felt actually safe around other men. I always felt kind of intimidated. I joined a men's group. I started to open up with other men, and I started to pay more attention to the relationships with other men in my life. And it turns out that joining that men's group was the most important thing for dealing with step 3. Why does the nice guy syndrome exist in the first place, is a question I asked myself. Well, Dr. Glover answers this question, luckily, and he boils it down to a single core reason. A nice guy believes that he needs to be nice just to be accepted by people, and that's because he believes that who he truly is broken, defective, or bad in some way. This is what is otherwise known as toxic shame. And the thing about shame is that when you don't talk about it, it grows. It grows in the dark when you don't pay attention to it. So in these men's groups, I started to talk about the things that I really didn't like about myself. I started to bring out the shadow, dark parts of myself and just give them some airtime. Toxic shame also has another side effect. You can't say no. You can't set a boundary, which leads me to step 4. Before I read this book, I had no idea what a boundary even was. I had no idea what that even looked like, and I definitely didn't have any idea on how I would communicate a boundary. I let people walk all over me. I was like that since I was probably about 8 years old. This also meant, which is another common thing with nice guys, that I had repressed rage that would bubble up to the surface and burst its way through at random times. In fact, I'm a little bit nervous to share this, but I actually almost crashed a car because I was raging at the wheel so much. Not even my family know that. So to deal with this, one question Dr. Glover recommends we ask ourselves is, what are we tolerating? What are we putting up with in our lives from other people? So I made a big list. I love lists apparently. And I made a commitment. I started speaking up, even though it terrified me. Initially, I started off just saying, I don't like that. And I had to just tolerate the painful, scary feelings that came up when I did that. Not only did painful, scary feelings come up when I learned to set a boundary, but they also came up in another way. And this relates to the final step, step 5. In my relationship, the one I mentioned earlier, I had an unspoken expectation. If I was nice and if I made her happy, she would want to have sex with me. And then when she didn't want to, I'd get super resentful. But then because being resentful challenged my nice guy personal sort of self-image, I then repressed the resentment as well in this sort of horrible, vicious, toxic cycle. It was really bad. This wasn't her fault. This was just because I wasn't communicating my needs clearly. What I just described is called a covert contract. And apparently, according to Dr. Glover, nice guys use these all the time. Nice guys do this because they still have needs, but their toxic shame that we talked about a moment ago means that they feel guilt in expressing these needs directly. Because they believe deep down they are broken or bad, they think that their needs are also broken and bad, so they don't want to communicate them. So I started asking myself another powerful question, and that was, what do I need from other people? Can you guess what I did next? I made a big list. I had a list of about 5 things that I really wanted. Then I started asking for these things directly, which scared the shit out of me. Making real progress in your life is bittersweet. On the one hand, it's sweet because you've made progress, you've improved, you've healed some of your shit, you've overcome some of your obstacles. But it's bitter. It's bitter because you look back with a little bit of regret and you think, how much time did I waste? And unfortunately, that's exactly how I feel. This book is one of the best books I've ever read in my entire life. Would I recommend it? I'd recommend it to any man who wants to be the best version of himself. It's hands down one of the best books on men's emotional health I've ever read. But it's a process. I still struggle occasionally. I'm not perfect. The nice guy syndrome is pretty unattractive, and there are a bunch of other behaviors that are also pretty unattractive to most women. So watch this video next. I hope I've got enough space on the screen. Watch this video next if you want to learn of the 4 main behaviors that will turn a woman off that you might be engaging in, but you're not aware of it. And if you want personal help from me to overcome your nice guy syndrome or other confidence related issues and your dating life and stuff, feel free to book a call using the link in the description below. As always, I appreciate you. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Peace.